Welcome to the Launch to Impact Leadership Podcast. My name is Dr. Keena, a leadership development coach, author, and former nonprofit administrator. I teach emerging leaders how to master the skills needed to effectively engage their staff, strengthen teams, accelerate performance, and position themselves for long-term success. If you haven't done so already, it's probably time for you to commit. So go ahead and hit subscribe to stay consistent with your growth journey. Now let's head into this episode. Compliance. It is the number one stressor for all ECE leaders. One mistake can mean citations, maybe funding risk, or even worse. But what if I told you that compliance does not have to be a consistent and constant headache? I've seen too many ECE leaders that are stuck in survival mode and scrambling to meet requirements at the last minute, feeling overwhelmed by the paperwork and constantly worrying about the next audit, the next visit. But here's the truth. Compliance stress isn't about the rules. It's really about the systems that you have in place. And when you have the right approach, compliance can become a routine and not feeling like a race against time or even a race against the licensing police, right? So let's take the stress out of compliance. Here are some best practices that will help to keep you and your program in good standing without all of the last minute panic and the anxiety around your coming visit. First step, build a compliance or a monitoring calendar. This is one of the mistakes that I see happen all too often because leaders are being more reactive instead of planning ahead and making sure that they are approaching it from a proactive standpoint. Make sure that you're creating a year-round compliance or monitoring calendar that breaks the requirements into small, manageable tasks that you are viewing on a consistent basis. Make sure you're reviewing the licensing regulations and you're marking all of your deadlines and requirements in place so that nothing sneaks up on you. Hey there! If you're nodding along right now, why don't you go ahead and send this episode to a friend or colleague who's also emerging in leadership? I'd really appreciate it. Now back to our episode. Don't just rely on your memory, because let's be honest, none of our memories work the way that we'd like them to anymore. Make sure you're setting reminders and assigning and delegating accountability to all appropriate team members. Compliance is a team effort. It's not a solo job. Now, I once worked with a center that went from failing audits to passing with 0 deficiencies just by implementing a compliance checklist and making sure that they were assigning monthly interval reviews. So, step 2 is train your team like their compliance officers or like their licensing analysts. This is important because you can't be everywhere at once and you need to make sure everybody understands what needs to happen and how it should be carried out. This is going to help you keep the program running smoothly. So hold quarterly refreshers, make sure you're including it in your staff meeting so that everyone knows exactly what's expected from their place of responsibility. This is about creating a culture where compliance isn't just the director's job or isn't just leadership's job, but it's everybody's responsibility. Everybody has a piece of the pie. And so instead of focusing on what's coming up and making sure we're getting ready, every day we should be ready for compliance. Every day we should be ready for a visit because it's a part of our routine. The third thing you're going to do is make sure that you're conducting your own internal audits. This really is the best way to make sure that you're avoiding compliance issues and catch them before licensing visits are happening. What you want to do is schedule your audits in between your monthly checks and then make sure you're doing your file reviews, make sure you have safety procedures in place, and that everything you're doing is in alignment with the licensing requirements. You want to know what compliance looks like in action real time in your center. Now, in Head Start, I work with a program that was struggling to stay in compliance. But after making sure that we had the regular routine self-checks in and we coached so people knew what they needed to do, they were able to pass their review without any corrective actions for the very first time. What you need to understand is that compliance is not intended to be a last-minute fire drill. When you have clear systems in place, you have trained staff, and you have your regular routine monitoring happening, you don't just meet the standards, you exceed them. And let's face it, compliance is just compliance. it's not quality. If compliance is causing you stress, we need to change that. Regulations are intended to protect children and families. So let's make compliance so much easier for you so that you can focus on the things that really matter. And that's leading a high quality program that exceeds compliance with confidence. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening to the Launch to Impact Leadership podcast. Remember, your growth creates space for others to thrive. So check the show notes for ways to make your leadership move. My name is Dr. Keena, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building momentum.